Well, my next two guests say that Canada needs to take much stronger action if it hopes to make a real difference in the fight against climate change. Roy Culpeper and Susan Tanner are with the group of 78, an organization formed almost 40 years ago now by 78 prominent Canadians committed to disarmament, sustainable development, and social and economic justice. Good to see you both. Thanks for coming to talk to me. So let's start the conversation here with the situation we have in Poland. We have COP24 conference underway in Poland, where the vast majority of their economy is still powered by coal. In fact, as the conference gets underway, they're opening another coal mine. And already the stage is set for a discussion there where the Paris targets are being framed as not good enough to make a difference, along with the fact that many countries just aren't meeting them, including Canada. So I guess let's start there. What's the point of a conference like this, given the situation we're all facing?
Well, it's going to take a long time to change attitudes, I'm afraid. And so what I wish is that Canada was doing more to take leadership internationally. And unfortunately, we're not doing as much as we could do. And one of the things we want to do at the Group of 78 is to try to thank them for doing the carbon pricing, encouraging them to do it, and encouraging them to go further.
Roy, what's your view? Having worked a long time in this field and watching what appears to be, at least from the outside, a repeated failures for countries to do what they said they were going to do.
Well, the Paris Agreement was a great achievement in one way. We had the whole world community coming together to converge on the need to do something, and they set some targets. And in fact, our environment minister was among those who was advocating for 1.5%, 1.5 degree Celsius warming, which was ahead of the pack, really. So we've already exercised some leadership on the world stage. The thing is not only to make the declaration, but to do it, as you've said. Both what countries have set as their targets and their actual achievements have fallen way short of anything that the Paris Agreement was aiming for.
Let's talk about this country. You held a news conference here on Parliament Hill today, suggested Canada should be doing and could be doing a lot more. Such as what? What does Canada need to be doing if it's going to make a real difference?
Well, for one thing, we need to make sure that Canadians understand the problem, because I think right now there's sort of it's too difficult, it's too hard, it's too depressing, we're not going to deal with it. Whereas we really need to act now, and we need to give the government social license to act, to not only set a carbon price, but to stop the subsidies to oil companies, to stop developing some of our fossil fuels, as they don't want to do in Poland, and change other areas, industrial areas, to stop their emissions. And that's a huge societal issue. We need to cooperate on how we can do that.
It's going to cost us, right? And if we don't lay out the costs now, it'll cost us even more in the future by way of protecting communities and individuals against the onslaught of climate change. So I think we have to have that conversation with Canadians, that costs are going to come. They're unavoidable, but better lower costs now than higher costs later.
You talked about cutting fossil fuel subsidies, and let me talk about the need for almost for Canadians to buy in if there's going to be success. And yet what Canadians see in the country now is this polarized debate over carbon taxes, which is the central part of pricing carbon, is the key part of the government's plan for fighting climate change. What do you think's happening here? There's now a political fight over whether a carbon tax is the way to go. We see provincial plans that don't include taxing carbon, but they say they can reach targets other ways. What do you think as you watch it all unfold?
Well, a carbon tax is imperative, that's our view. And Bill Nordhaus, the Nobel laureate in economics, has made that the centerpiece of his work. And basically he's saying that if you don't price carbon properly, if you underprice it, you're going to overconsume it, right? So a carbon tax is absolutely necessary to make sure that it gives incentives to consumers to consume less, and for entrepreneurs and investors to invest in alternative energy.
Does that mean there's no other way for provinces to achieve targets without a carbon tax?
No, there are also complements to the carbon tax by way of investing in green energy and alternative sources of.
But for instance, Ontario said last week it can meet the targets without a carbon tax.
No, it's necessary, but not sufficient. I think that the Ontario plan is a bit of a sham. I don't think it's going to meet the targets. And I think the problem is that Canadians really don't understand that we're facing extinction. We really are facing a problem as a species. And it's just hard for them to take that on. But it's really a serious problem, and we need to be doing a lot more things than just a carbon tax.
Let me talk about that. You talked at your news conference today about a real sort of changes, societal changes in a conversation across society. I think I heard one of the discussions might be around having Canadians understand the carbon footprint of eating meat. What does that mean?
It means eating less meat. It means
but what does it mean that it's important to figure out there's a carbon footprint attached to what you consume?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everything that we consume involves using carbon. Like if we're using that as our main fuel, then it involves using carbon to make it, to transport it, sometimes even to consume it. And some things that we use and eat or consume use more carbon than others, and meat turns out to be one of them.
One of the most, yeah. Livestock in particular is hugely carbon intensive.
So the recommendation would be what?
To eat, not to all become vegetarian, but to eat less meat. Go in that direction in a significant way.
But not doing that for health reasons, yes, I suppose, but more as a consciousness of what it's doing to the climate, consumption of meat. That's a,
Right.
Isn't that a pivotal thought process change for Canadians?
It is.
It is, yeah.
And how do we get there?
Well, we have to converse with our fellow Canadians. We're not pretending that this is easy. It's a long-term situation that has to engage Canadians and make them willing participants and partners in this, because otherwise we're all going to perish together.
Unfortunately, the rest of the world is ahead of us. Canadians have more deniers than many parts of the world. And I think the oil industry, I mean, we're a resource economy. The oil industry has done its job in slowing down action. And unfortunately, that's making it more difficult to take action now. Now we have to take more drastic actions and to stay alive.
Let me finish on this, because we didn't really touch on it. The notion of preparation and mitigating the impacts of climate change, which is already here. You've suggested, Mr. Culpeper, the government's failing at that. What more does the government need to do?
Well, a lot of people have commented on this, including the Auditor General. The federal government and most provinces simply do not plan for adaptation, i.e. to build a resilience of communities and individual households by changing building codes, to making buildings and housing less vulnerable to extreme weather events, you know, getting their roofs ripped off by high winds, for example, or getting backups through the sewage system in
Because of major storms.
floods. Yeah, those things can be done. They're not high tech, but we're not thinking about them, and we're not planning for them, and we're not investing in them.
Although I think in the Ontario plan unveiled last week, there was actually some discussion.
There was talk about
yeah.
risk assessment,
Yeah.
so that was a step in the right direction, but only a baby step.
All right, thank you both. We'll watch how this story unfolds. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.